finish off squaring up our piece of lumber with the radial arm saw. Radial arm saw is used after we go from the joiner, or from the planer, joiner, table saw, radial arm saw. Our piece of wood has been through a process where it has been smoothed with the planer, one edge joined, the other edge ripped on the table saw, and then the last thing is we have to square up the ends. The fence, stationary, it doesn't tilt, it doesn't move, stays still. The table supports the wood, and then the blade comes out on a track. This is the arm, this is the carriage, and the blade. The big U-shaped part of this is called the yoke. We won't worry about that right now. When I teach you the tricks of the radial arm saw, cutting angles, cutting compound miters, cutting simple miters, you're going to need to know the yoke and all the other parts. But right now you need to know the table, fence, arm. Here's the handle. The blade comes out and returns to its position behind the fence after every use. That's on the safety test. After you make your cut, it has to return behind the fence. Both of our radial arm saws are spring loaded. You let go, they return on their own. Mine at home does not. You might use one someday that does not return, and that's why it's on the safety test. No matter what, make sure you push it behind the fence back to a safe position. The radial arm saw cuts, the blade is coming down in this rotation, down against the table, up against the fence is where all the pressure is. And the pressure from the cut is supported by the table and the fence, not by you. All you have to do is make sure that your piece doesn't move while it's being cut. So you have to make sure it stays down on the table up against the fence and doesn't move side to side. Make sure you spread your feet out, have good balance. As you pull the saw out, remember the rotation, it's going to want to pull itself forward. So you're controlling both. You're controlling the speed of the cut because the saw is going to want to take more than it can handle and jump out. Let me ask you, if you ride your bike over the Channel Islands Bridge down here or over the 3rd Street Bridge going over the train tracks, you start going up that hill, does it get easier or harder? It's harder. If you stay in the same gear, or if your bike only has one gear, what do you got to do to make it over the hill? You either got to pedal harder, or you're going to definitely slow down, right? The blade's going to slow down if you try to make it do too much. Just like when you go over a hill, you try to do too much, you're not only going to slow down, you could even stop altogether, right? Anybody had that happen to them going up a hill? Not in the right gear? Just stop. You're standing on the pedal. Nothing's happening. It's because you're the same, you have the same power that you did when you were on the bottom, but the hill's too steep. So the same on this tool. If you're cutting a thick piece of wood, you need to slow down. The tool needs more time to do its job. Thick is different than thin and wide. We could have a piece very thin. Let's see one of these. Could have a piece that's thin and wide. The blade's still doing just as much work because the thickness is really what matters on this tool. If if you have a thicker piece of wood or a harder, denser piece of wood, you're going to have to slow down. There's no doubt that that tool can't handle all of it. So listen as I make the cuts. You're going to listen to how the blade sounds when it's cutting this type of material or when it's cutting thicker material. How do we remove scraps? How do we remove scraps? With another piece of wood, a scrap piece of wood. Or if you're cutting this piece of wood, you can use this piece to remove the scraps. As long as it's big enough to keep your hands outside of the yellow. The yellow zone, we never cross, even when the tool's at a dead stop. We never put our hands inside the yellow zone for any reason. Use a stick. If the stick accidentally gets cut, replace it, no charge. If you get cut, it's a lot worse. I'm going to make a few cuts. Watch where I put my hands. Watch where I have my feet. When we're cutting on the left side, I use my left hand to feed the blade through with the right. If I'm cutting on the other side, I need to switch hands. Right hand holding, left hand pulling. Never cross your arms. Never cross your arms. Don't ever hold the wood down here and pull here. If you're right-handed, that's okay. You can switch. You don't have to use your right hand only when you pull the tool out. You'll be more comfortable using your left, your body square. You'll have more control. Don't ever cross your arms. It's definitely on the test. I know it is. Can't have anything else in the line of the saw blade, including yourself. Whatever you're cutting, that's it. If I have this extra piece here, what happens if the saw blade catches that piece? It's going to slam it back up against the fence. Remember, all the pressure goes down and up against the fence. So you have to be ready. This piece needs to come off the table until it's ready to be cut. Definitely outside of the yellow zone. Same with this piece. This is our scrap piece just in case we have to move things around. And what if the piece fits inside the yellow and you need to make a cut? How do you hold it? Use this. Yeah, use this. You hold the piece down at an angle. If you hold it just flat like this, the piece could flip up. So you got to hold it down and up against the fence simultaneously, keeping your hand out of the yellow, keeping your body out of the line of the saw blade, just like the table saw. So keep your body out of the line of the blade. If you skip a step and one edge is not straight, you can't cut it on here. If any part is away from the fence, it can get slammed back. So you check the fence, make sure it's clean. Make sure your piece of wood is straight, flat against the fence. Wait until the saw comes to a dead stop, then remove your scrap, keeping your hands outside the yellow. If you need to do both, can you do both without turning the saw blade off? You have to stop it after every cut. We don't need to stop it after every cut. We keep our hands outside the yellow. I can slide this down. And cut the other end. Return the blade behind the fence. Wait till it comes to a dead stop.